did 4 types.
Yeah, please come again, one at a time, one after other. We discussed. I think you can raise hands so that we can go one after other. That will be more convenient. Then two people speaking simultaneously, and yeah, and then yeah, go ahead, my train.
Sir, we were doing 4 types of anubhav. Angik, Vachik, Aharya and Sattvic.
Right. Anubhav is consequence of emotions, but Abhinay and all that are modes of representation. You don't confuse between the two. For example, you are scared, right? Now you will sweat or you will show fear on your face. But when you represent it on the stage, it is something else. I hope you get the difference between actual Anubhav and how Anubhav is represented through Abhinaya. Right? So not to confuse between the two. Right? Is that clear or is it still confusing?
Sir, it's clear.
Thanks. Yes, anyone else? Very good. You can see this is how I can actually sort out many of the difficulties which you even don't know, right? So it's always a good idea to share whatever you remember. Yeah, go ahead, Fiza.
Yes, so we discussed about the model spectator and how Bharat gives, the meaning of a model spectator. What are the qualities he should have?
Right. So what are those qualities of model spectator you remember?
He discusses how each and every person, according to their interest, they will look at the play. Like a young man will derive satisfaction from love, but an old person or a learned person might derive satisfaction from the learned or religious principles. And those who are in money, they will look into wealth, and those who are having, children will look into more musical scenes.
Right. So so you can see that though he is talking of a model spectator, he is aware of the fact that there cannot be single way of watching or appreciating drama or work of art. And very often he invokes those 4 purusharthas, right? Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha, which you find in later Vedic texts. And so in your youth, when calm is important, by calm you mean desire and pleasure seeking, right? Not exactly limited to sexual, but definitely sexual, calm. And Artha is about wealth and material success, right? Dharma is a complex term which has got whole range of, you don't have an equivalent at all in English. Roughly translated as duty, but then that's not very accurate either. Because it's like following your Swadharma, right? In ancient times, Swadharma indicated your Varna Dharma. Means if you are Brahmin, then you should be following Dharma of your Varna. And that is what Krishna tells Arjun in the battlefield, right? That you are a Kshatriya and how come you are behaving like a Brahmin, right? When you don't want to kill your ancestors and all that, and your old family members. A Kshatriya is supposed to do anything for getting the kingdom back, right? So the strange attack that Arjun has when Krishna is telling him to follow Swadharma. So Swadharma indicates who you are being reflected in your actions. So if you are a student, then you should be studying, right? So if you're not following that Swadharma, then it's you are not a student, right? So that is a more modern interpretation, but it's a complex term and has a history which is very complex. And finally, moksha is, as I said, it is about liberation from the cycles of birth and rebirth. wandering in this samsara, right? So according to this four major goals or aims of life, people are at various stages of that, and when they watch the play, they respond likewise. That's one thing, and it's also about your occupations. So if a carpenter would be interested in the carpentry aspect of the play, and somebody who is a king may be interested in how king looks at things. So though model spectator is somebody who is he defines in some way. The model spectator has to be, he's somebody who is pure and honest, right? If I go back and share screen, right, a model spectator is one who can you see the screen? If all his senses distracted, is pure and honest, is expert in judging pros and cons, gun and dosh, right? These are the terms used. And ignore a fault and lovingly appreciate merit, is regarded as spectator of, or Sahridaya, or Kaneshwar, or Rasika, right? Kaneshwar is an English word, right? So this is what we discussed in Bharat's Natya Shastra, right? And we discussed rasa and all that important aspect. Now let us take a look at I think other aspects of and the book that I am referring to, and I think it was Bhavya who was interested in which books are useful, right? Bhavya, is he there today? Yeah, no. Is Bhavya present? No. He's not keeping well, he said. Anyway, this is one book that is very important. Can you see the cover of this book?
Yes, sir.
It's Indian Literary Criticism, edited by G.N. Devi, one of very famous, renowned teachers of MS University of Baroda. Right. So it contains, if you see, extracts from important Sanskrit theorists like Bharat Muni, and from Tamil, Tolkappiyar, you have an extract. Bhartuhari is very famous linguist, right? And Bhartuhari is famous book is Vakyapadiya. Then Dandi is another very important theorist of Sanskrit literature, but also a poet in his own right, and also a writer, very famous. And I think people attribute Dash Kumar Charit, or 10 princes, story of 10 princes to Dandi, 7th century, right? Anandvardhan is one of the path-breaking philosophers, and he transforms the idea of rasa and argues that dhvani is the center of meaning. Then you have Dhananjay, definition and descriptions in drama. You have 10th century, right? Kuntaka, who talks about language of poetry and metaphor in his book Vakrokti Jivita, probably 10th century. Abhinav Gupta is supposed to be one of the greatest philosophical critics in Sanskrit philosophy and criticism. And his great commentary on Mahabharata, called Abhinav Bharati, right? Probably 11th century, talks about Shanta Rasa, right? The 10th Rasa that we talked about. Jnaneshwara is a very important Marathi Sant poet, 13th century. Amir Khusro is another great Persian philosopher and a literary critic who wrote also in vernacular language. So by the time various Islamic regimes, largely Turks, Iranians, and later on Mughals, right, largely from Central Asia, started ruling India, they also developed their own history, literary theory, and criticism. Amir Khusro was one of such important philosophers. Then you have Rup Goswami, who adds Bhakti Ras to the list, right? So you have 8 ras. Ninth is added by Abhinav Gupta, and finally Rup Goswami adds Bhakti Ras to it in 16th century. Then you have Keshav Das, who talks about Guna and Dosha of literary criticism in his book called Rasika Priya, written in Hindi. Al-Badauni in his Tawarik. Then by the time you reach 19th century, you have Mirza Asaduddin Khan Ghalib, I'm sorry, who wrote many important letters. Are people familiar with Ghalib?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Heard about him.
Right. क्या सुना है गालिब के बारे में?
मूवीज में कोट किया है.
ओके, कौन से मूवी में?
शायर थे वो.
हाँ, राइट. एंड कौन से मूवी में कोट किया है?
सर वो याद नहीं है.
Okay, Bhargavi, this book is available on Amazon, right? Okay. Rabindranath Tagore, have you heard of him?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Of course.
Yes.
Okay. Then Sri
We had
Aurobindo.
him in second semester.
Okay. So what did you study by Rabindranath Tagore?
My boyhood days.
That is his autobiographical writing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Rabindranath Tagore, then Sri Aurobindo, you know, right? Balkrishna Sitaram Pardekar is a very famous Marathi literary critic and a poet. Krishna Rayan is also an important critic. You find Suresh Joshi, an important critic, about whom you are reading also in your Gujarati literature in English translation paper, right? Anna?
Yes, sir.
Then Balchandra Nemade is an important Marathi critic and novelist. Spivak is important post-colonial scholar, and Ejaz Ahmad. So these are modern critics. And then you have selection of important critics on interpreting various ancient Sanskrit poetics. You have K. Krishnamurti, who has a very interesting, very comprehensive essay on Sanskrit poetics in this book. M. Hirayana was an important philosopher. A.K. Ramanujan is probably one of the most important contemporary poets and translators, right? For a very brief time, he was in Baroda, MS University of Baroda. And on ancient Tamil poetics. Now, this is very important for us because we think that Indian criticism means only Sanskrit criticism, right? It doesn't mean only Sanskrit criticism. Indian is a wider term which would include Tamil, right? Which can include Amir Khusro and Al-Badauni and Ghalib as well, right? Na? Is Ghalib an Indian poet? Yes, no, maybe.
Sir, is he
Yes, sir. From
Central
Agra.
Asian? Is he a Central Asian poet?
Can you come again?
Ghalib, is he a Central Asian poet? I think something like that. Not Indian.
I'm not. He is. He, I think, lived for most of his life in Delhi, and he wrote in Persian and Urdu. So, can you call him Indian?
Sir, problematic again. Very problematic.
Why?
The idea of nationality. He lived in Delhi, so we can say he's Indian, but he didn't write in, Persian, Urdu are not exactly considered Indian languages, are they?
Persian is a classical Indian language after Sanskrit. What do you mean by Indian? 1000 साल से पर्शियन इंडिया में है, and there are many non-Muslims who wrote extensively in Persian. Nagar Brahmins of Gujarat, right, were famous for their writings in Persian, Farsi. And Persian is not exactly a Muslim language. Persian is Iranian language, right? From Iran. So we tie up in somehow language with religion, and that creates all the mess. Sanskrit में लिखने वाले बहुत बुद्ध भी थे, जैन भी थे, right? So who are not Hindus in the sense that they are considered religious minorities, right? They don't follow Vedas, but they wrote in Sanskrit. Yes, so you can consider, are Bauddhas and Jains Indian? Stuti?
I guess you can say that, but
I think someone
people
else
all
is
over the world
speaking in
follow
the background.
these religions.
I think someone is speaking in the background. उससे डिस्टर्ब हो रहा है. स्तुति जो कुछ कह रही है वो सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है. Anyway, go ahead. Please repeat, Stuti, because there was some background disturbance. Yeah.
Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jainism and Buddhism, people all over the world follow these religions now. So
Are they
I
Indian?
don't know that. I don't know the answer to that.
Religion के ऊपर में passport citizenship का mark कब से लगने लगा? I don't know. Okay. Anyway, just a question, because remember one of the conversations that I had in the beginning was regarding what do you even mean by the term Indian, right? And that becomes a complicated question when we look at the history of Indian civilization. So Indian, as we are using it in for our purpose, indicates more of a Indian historical civilization of subcontinent, Indian subcontinent, not the modern nation state, right? By modern nation state, you mean a kind of political unity and the question of identity as Indian, right? And the question of citizenship that is often tied, which did not exist 200 years ago. In fact, even Queen of Jhansi, Rani Lakshmibai, in spite of what Kangana has to say, is famous for saying that "Main meri Jhansi nahi dungi," right? So the fighters in 1857 rebellion against British mostly were fighting for their own kingdoms, right? And they united under Bahadur Shah Zafar, who was the last Mughal king of India, right? And people say that Mughals are not Indian, but Lakshmibai and Tatya Tope would have differed. So what do you have to say about this, right? The Mughals are Indians, no? Anything to say about this? Yeah, go ahead. Dharma, yeah.
Sir, I think only after we have a proper base to, judge upon how do we consider someone in Indian, only after that can we talk about any other things with proper, substance, I would say.
But right now, from your existing knowledge, then what do you say about that? What is that proper method? Nobody has devised that method.
Yeah, even I don't know, sir.
Even I don't know. Right? There is no proper method for this question. Okay. Right. So let's look at, this is not prescribed as part of your syllabus, but this is helpful for us to understand the play that we are studying. Right. That is Mudra Rakshas. And this is a statement by a very famous Sanskrit critic called Dhananjay. right? He is known more as critic of Abhinav Gupta, but then he lays down very important theory of theater, right? So he is somewhere 10th century, right? Almost 12 centuries after Bharat's Natya Shastra. 12 shatak, 1200 saal baad, right? So he classifies dramas as per subject, that is Vastu, hero, that is Neta or Nayak, but more properly Neta, sentiment as Rasa, right? So drama is classified according to the subject, that is Vastu, hero, and sentiment or Rasa. Clear? This is how classifies the existing drama by 10th century, right? After Christ. So Vastu, he says, is of two kinds, Adhikarika and Prasangika. Adhikarika is the main subject and incidental subject is Prasangika subject. So for example, if a story is about the king and he is trying to woo the heroine, but Vidushak also is trying to woo another woman. So that can become prasangika or something that is incidental, right? So the possession of the desired result is called adhikara, and so the possessor is called adhikari. Incidental subject is something which is not so important to the main subject matter, something which is ancillary. Is that clear? Any questions about this? Then he further divides it into episodes or pataka. Pataka yani banner hote the, right? So when it is of short duration, it is called prakari, and when it is has a something which is external to the main story subject theme, it is called pataka santana naka. Not very clear about that. Forget, but main thing is theme जिसे हम कहते हैं, subject of the story is called vastu, and vastu is main one, that is the adhikarika vastu and prasangika vastu. Then the plot, and he says plot of an action has three objects of human existence. Right, and the cause of this karya or action, karya is the activity or the action in the play, is driven by its bija or germ, and secondary matter of the drama is interrupted, and the cause of its being resumed is called acheda karana. An expansion of that bindu bij is called bindu. So it's imagine like a tree, right? So bij is the seed of the play. Then bindu is its expansion, right? And the episodes are patakas. An episodal incident is called prakari, and the action is called karya. These are the 5 elements of plot. Now you can think of how Aristotle has talked about plots, right? I don't know if you have discussed that. Aristotle makes a distinction between simple plot and complex plot. Simple plot is a singular one, and complex has got multiple problems in it, and subplots are also attached to it. And Aristotle himself says that complex plot is better than simple plot. Right? You will study that probably when you study Aristotle, right? So compare it with this theory of plot according to Dhananjaya. So plot is called Artha Prakruti, right? That's the term. Theme is called Vastu, right? And Vastu grows from Bij, then it expands into Bindu, right? And it has the plot is divided into various episodes or pataka, and the incidents that happened in that episode is called prakari, and the whole set of actions is karya, right? And he then talks about 5 stages of karya or action. First is arambha, the beginning, effort, yatna or prayatna, prospect of success, yani abhi success ho sakta hai, praptasya, right? Certainty of success is niyatapti, and attainment of result is phalagama, right? Arambha is merely eagerness to obtain something, right? And effort that you put in is prayatna, and prospect of success, that when you see something possible now, is called praptasya, and certainty, you are certain कि ये मिलने वाला है, मुझे सक्सेस मिलने वाला है, तो नित्याप्ति कहते हैं. And is assurance because there is no risk. And finally, attainment of result or phala yoga is what you started out with. अर्थ प्रकृति, आप क्या चाहते थे और आपको वो फल योग मिल जाता. There is a yog that you get it, right? Now these 5 elements of plot, right, are parallel with 5 sandhis. Sandhi is connection, and it also depicts situation or condition, जिसे अवस्था कहते हैं, of the action. And there are 5 junctures, sandhis, starting with mukha, right? So the beginning is called mukha, right? And it's connected to other things. So mukha, then you have progression, pratimukha, development, garbha, the pause, avamarsha, and conclusion, upasamhuti, or nirvahana is a solution of the problem. Right? The opening mukha is the origination of germ bija, the bij, that is the seed. And there are 12 subdivisions of opening, like upekshapa, parikara, parinasya, vilobana, yukti, prapti, samadhana, conflict of feelings is called vidhana. Surprise, paribhavana, udbeda, bheda, and karana, right? So there are these various kinds of opening scenes. Now you can compare this with Aristotle, right? Aristotle says that there is a rising action, and then there is the climax, and then there is you untangle or whatever complication, and it is the falling action, right? So it's a kind of pyramidal structure that Aristotle imagines, but the Sanskrit theorist Dhananjaya seems to have extremely complex notion of plot, right? And there is no rising action or falling action, but progression, development, pause, and conclusion, right? Conflict, you find it in feelings. Anything to say about these 2 theories? What Aristotle says is the beginning, the middle, and the end. ये होना चाहिए, and they should be causally related. Cause effect का relation होना चाहिए. The middle cannot have. It cannot be just like that. It should have a causal beginning, cause effect. कार्य कारण कहते हैं, but यहाँ कार्य कारण is not considered very important, it seems. What is important is the development, unfolding of the plot. And plot is almost imagined as a tree with a beech, right? So in Aristotle, you have beginning, climax, and then there is a moment in Greek tragedy called anagnorisis, where you realize that probably you are your own enemy. and then it relates in. So you have been fighting something, and then you realize that asli dushman to main hi hu, and then there is a falling action and confusion. So rise. So that is the pyramidal structure in Aristotle. You don't have pyramidal. It is like tree-like structure, right? That is growing, unfolding outwards in ancient Sanskrit drama. Then there are 4 types of neta. That is uh, the heroes or the protagonist, right? And 4 types are light-hearted, that is Lalit, calm, shant, exalted, udatta, vehement is uddata. The self-controlled and light-hearted hero is called Dhira Lalita. He is free from anxiety, fond of arts, happy and gentle. The self-controlled and calm hero, Dhira Shanta, is a Brahman or the like, possessed of generic merits of the hero. The self-controlled and exalted hero is Dhirodatta. He is of great excellence, exceedingly serious, forbearing, not boastful, resolute, with self-assertion suppressed, and firm of purpose. The self-controlled and vehement hero is Dhirodatta. He is altogether dominated by pride and jealousy, whoever devoted to magic, wholly devoted to magic practice. Deceit, self-assertive, fickle, irascible, and boastful. Now these are the 4 kinds of hero. कौन से हैं? Lalita, Shant, Udatta, और Uddata. But the person who is Shant can also be self-controlled, patient, Dhira Shant, Dhirodatta. He is self-controlled and yet exalted. Dhirodhatta is dominated by pride. ये उद्धट के साथ धीर दे दो तो धीरोद्धट, right? So these are the 4 types. तो उसके सामने self control लगा तो धीर ललित, धीर शांत, धीरोदत्त and धीरोद्धट. Anyone has to say something about these? Now remember, I don't expect you to memorize this for exams. Please keep this in mind. This is for your understanding. But it's like without studying Aristotle, you cannot study Greek tragedy. Right? वैसे ही without studying these theories of ancient Sanskrit drama, you cannot study ancient